The morning light in Hartford, Connecticut, arrives softly, filtering through the elm trees that line the quiet streets. In a large Victorian house on Hawthorne Street, the first sounds are not of urgency but of steady, thoughtful movement. This is where Katharine Hepburn was born on a May Day in 1907, the second of 6 children. The home is a sturdy, clapboard structure painted a calm cream, with a wide porch that catches the early sun. Inside, the rooms are filled with books, medical journals, and the scent of fresh linen. Her father, Thomas Hepburn, is a surgeon, a man of precise habits who believes in fresh air and cold baths. Her mother, Katharine Martha Houghton Hepburn, is a dedicated reformer, a woman who speaks quietly but carries immense conviction. Together they build a household where questions are encouraged and independence is a daily lesson. The children are taught to swim in the chill waters of the Connecticut River, to climb trees without fear, and to read by the window until twilight blurs the words. It is a childhood wrapped in a serene, almost stern, confidence, a foundation of steel cloaked in domestic calm. As a girl, Kate, as she is called, wears her thick auburn hair cropped short, more practical than fashionable. The fashion of the day demands curls and ribbons, but she prefers trousers borrowed from her older brother and a shirt that allows her to move freely. The neighborhood sees her riding a bicycle at full speed, feet pedaling with a rhythm that matches her stubborn heart. There are long afternoons on the banks of the Park River, watching dragonflies skate across the still surface. The water reflects the canopy of oak leaves, a ceiling of shifting green that dapples the ground below. She skips stones, counting the ripples as they spread and vanish. These are the first lessons in persistence, the way a flat stone needs just the right angle, the right flick of the wrist, to dance across the water. She learns that nature rewards a delicate touch and an unwavering eye. This interplay of light and water will stay with her, a private memory of perfect clarity that she will later carry into the artificial glare of film sets. Sundays bring a special quiet. The family gathers in the parlor, a room of high ceilings and tall windows dressed in lace. The furniture is solid mahogany, polished to a deep glow by years of careful hands. On the mantel, a porcelain clock ticks with a sound like a soft heartbeat. After a morning walk, rain or shine, they settle into an easy silence, each with a book. Kate often curls into a wingback chair, legs tucked beneath her, lost in Shakespeare or a novel by Jane Austen. Outside, the church bells ring, their notes drifting through the closed windows like a gentle reminder of the world beyond. The afternoon sun climbs, making the dust motes dance in long columns of gold. No one speaks. The only communication is the occasional turn of a page. This deliberate peace shapes her understanding of strength not as noise, but as a profound, centered stillness. It is here, in this amberlit room, that the seeds of an actress are planted, one who will command attention not through shouting, but through the power of simply being present. The family estate at Fenwick, on the Connecticut shore, becomes her true cathedral. The house sits at the end of a long, sandy lane, a weathered shingle-style cottage that faces the endless expanse of Long Island Sound. The architecture is unpretentious, wide porches, shuttered windows, and a roof that slopes as if bowing to the wind. Inside, the floors are bare wood, cool under bare feet, and the furniture is covered in faded chintz. The entire house smells of salt and old wood, a perfume that never fades. Mornings begin with a ritual, a plunge into the sound, no matter the temperature. The water here is often gray-green and bracingly cold, and she swims with a powerful, rhythmic stroke, as if trying to reach the horizon. Afterward, wrapped in a rough towel, she sits on the porch and watches the light change. Gulls drift overhead, their calls the only punctuation in the wide silence. In this place, the boundaries between self and landscape blur softly, like watercolors on damp paper. Tragedy shapes the family as firmly as the quiet joys. When the news arrives of her adored older brother Tom's sudden death, the house on Hawthorne Street becomes a vessel for unspoken grief. Kate withdraws into a silent corner, absorbing the shock like a tree absorbs a lightning strike, changed, but still standing. In the years that follow, The loss becomes a private shadow that walks beside her, making the light feel more precious. She begins to retreat into characters from books, trying on different lives like borrowed coats. The attic becomes her stage, a dusty space under the eaves where sunlight slants through grimy windows. Boxes of old clothes become costumes, a cracked mirror becomes her audience. She recites lines in a whisper, her voice filling the small gable. There is no applause, only the settling of old floorboards and the distant sound of her mother's typewriter. In this solitary world, performance becomes a form of breathing, a necessary exhale for a heart learning to carry weight. Education arrives with the same brisk, independent spirit. She attends Bryn Mawr College, a campus of gray stone buildings and sweeping lawns under the Philadelphia sky. The Gothic architecture rises around her like a forest of carved rock, and she walks the cloisters in sensible shoes, books pressed against her chest. Solitude follows her here too. She is not a joyful socializer, but a sharp observer. The library becomes her sanctuary, a cathedral of books with stained glass windows that throw jewel-toned shapes onto the polished tables. She reads plays aloud in the empty stacks, her voice bouncing softly off the spines. Rain patters on the glass roof, creating a backdrop of whispering percussion. It is here that she decides, fully and finally, to become an actress. The decision feels less like ambition and more like a natural extension of her love for language and light. The stage is simply another attic, larger and brighter, but still a place where truth can be told in a sequestered silence. Graduation brings her back to Hartford in the late spring, when the lilacs are heavy and the air is sweet with the promise of summer. She walks the same streets she rode as a child, but now her gaze is different, directed inward and outward at once. The Victorian houses stand like wise elders, their gingerbread trim casting intricate shadows in the early evening light. She passes the Bushnell Park, where the carousel turns lazily, its painted horses rising and falling in a rhythm as old as her heartbeat. The gold dome of the Capitol building glints in the last rays of sun, a distant signal of a larger life waiting. She knows she will leave this gentle geography, but she will never truly abandon it. Connecticut has given her a landscape of quiet resilience, cold water, leafy shade, and the steady ticking of a mantel clock. These are the tools she will carry forward, a kit of serene certainties for the uncertain world of theater and film. The young woman who boards the train to Baltimore does so without fanfare, just a calm, unhurried step into the next chapter. The train that carries Katharine Hepburn south hums a steady lullaby on the tracks. She watches the New England landscape blur into the softer, greener hills of Maryland. Her destination is Baltimore and the company of Edwin H. Knopf, a stock theater where young actors learn their craft one role at a time. The theater itself is a modest brick building on a side street, its marquee simple and its seats worn smooth by generations of patrons. Inside, the air smells of face powder, sawdust, and old velvet. The stage is a wooden platform that creaks gently underfoot, each board a testimony to countless performances. The light here is dim and golden, spilling from exposed bulbs around the mirrors in the dressing rooms. For Kate, this is not a dimming but a quiet illumination. She learns to apply her own makeup, to wait in the wings without fidgeting, to feel the exact moment when the silence before a line is most potent. The theater is a clock of emotion, and she studies its mechanics with the patience of a watchmaker. Her early roles are small, often a maid or a whimsical friend, but she approaches each one with a deliberateness that surprises the more seasoned players. She stands in the wings, wrapped in a heavy wool coat against the backstage chill, watching the lead actors speak their lines into the dusty light. The air is thick with the scent of heated metal from the stage lights and old dust that dances in the single beam of a follow spot. She listens not just to the words, but to the spaces between them, the breath, the pause, the unspoken thought. The wooden flats painted to look like drawing rooms dissolve into real places in her mind. On her nights off, she walks the cobblestone streets of Baltimore, her footsteps echoing softly. The gas lamps create pools of amber light, each one a tiny stage. She imagines scenes unfolding in the shadows beneath the elms, a whispered confession, a long farewell. The city's quiet nighttime architecture becomes her silent instructor, teaching her how light and dark can sculpt an emotional landscape. A breakthrough comes with the play The Warrior's Husband, a comedic tale that requires her to enter by descending a long, steep flight of stairs while carrying a dead stag on her shoulders. The set is a fantastical vision of an Amazonian court with towering columns painted in foam marble and a deep blue cyclorama that suggests an endless sky. The staircase is a marvel of stagecraft, a sweeping curve that seems to vanish into the rafters. On opening night, she waits at the top step, heart beating a calm, steady rhythm. The stag is a lightweight prop, but she holds it as if it were heavy, her body finding the center of gravity with instinctive grace. The lights warm her shoulders as she begins her descent. She moves with a regal slowness, each step deliberate, her voice ringing out clear and cool. The audience, a dark sea of faces below, becomes utterly still. In that moment, she learns the secret of commanding attention, not by rushing, but by trusting the silence to hold the room. After the curtain falls, the applause feels distant, like rain on a faraway roof. Her Broadway debut in A Bill of Divorcement is a quiet storm. The theater on West 45th Street is a grander beast than any she has known: gilded moldings, plush crimson seats, a chandelier that drips crystals like frozen rain. Her dressing room is on the top floor, a tiny garret with a window that overlooks the alley. She can hear the city's distant murmur as she pins up her hair and studies her lines in the mirror. The mirror itself is old, its silvering slightly spotted, giving her reflection a soft, antique glow. The role of Sydney, a young woman confronting a returning father, demands a fragility she mines from her own well of loss. On stage, she does not act so much as inhabit. The lights are warm but not harsh, and when she stands in the center of the set, a tasteful English drawing room with chintz armchairs and a fireplace that glows with an electric flame, she feels utterly at home. The scene where she breaks a vase and then carefully, silently, picks up the pieces becomes a signature of controlled emotion. Audiences lean forward, captivated not by noise, but by the exquisite tension of held breath. Reviews appear the next morning in the newspapers, the ink smelling faintly of oil and paper. She reads them by the window of a small apartment she has taken in a brownstone on the Upper East Side. The light outside is the pale gold of a New York autumn, filtering through curtains that sway gently in the breeze from the Hudson. The critics call her a find, a new star, but the words seem to belong to someone else. She folds the paper neatly and sets it aside, then pours herself a cup of tea. The apartment is sparsely furnished: a wooden table, 2 chairs, a daybed covered in a simple linen throw. On the wall hangs a single photograph of Fenwick. The view from the window shows a row of back gardens, each one a tiny green secret. She watches a woman hang laundry on a line, the white sheets billowing like sails. New York is a city of intense, contained life, where thousands of private dramas play out behind brick walls. She savors the anonymity of her own kitchen, the silence of the gas burner, the way the steam from her tea unfurls like a question mark. Hollywood calls soon after, a summons to the West Coast that arrives in the form of a telegram delivered by a liveried messenger. The yellow envelope sits on the wooden table for a long hour before she opens it. The decision to go is not made with the fever of ambition, but with a practical curiosity. She packs a single trunk with clothes she considers sensible: tweed skirts, cashmere sweaters, a pair of men's trousers. The train journey across the country is a ribbon of changing landscapes. The flat Midwest gives way to the Rockies, and finally to the desert, where the light is a brilliant, unsparing white. She steps off the train at Union Station in Los Angeles to a world of palm trees and bougainvillea, the air dry and scented with citrus. The architecture is a curious mix of Spanish missions and bungalow courts, all white stucco and red tile roofs gleaming under a sky of porcelain blue. She is picked up in a long, black automobile that glides silently through streets of jacaranda trees. The light here is different, clearer, sharper, made for photography. It is a light that will define her image for decades: the high cheekbones, the intelligent eyes, the freckles she never allows to be covered. In this new world of perpetual sunshine, she feels both a stranger and, oddly, a returning native. The first house she rents in the Hollywood Hills is a modest Spanish-style bungalow perched on a slope, its walls the color of warm sand. A small fountain gurgles in the tiled courtyard, and orange trees grow in glazed pots, their fruit glowing like tiny suns. Each morning, she wakes to the coo of mourning doves and the distant, rhythmic sound of a gardener's shears. The bedroom is simple, a heavy oak bed with white linens, a writing desk by the window, and a closet filled with her now famous trousers and shirts. Sunlight pours through the blinds in stripes, painting the dark wood floors with bars of gold. She begins her day without hurry, a glass of cold water, a few minutes of stretching on the patio, her bare feet warm on the sun-heated tiles. The city below is a quiet tapestry of red roofs and green gardens, the Pacific Ocean a thin silver line on the horizon. This is a world built on illusion, but she roots herself in the simple realities, the texture of an adobe wall, the scent of jasmine on the morning breeze, the taste of a ripe grapefruit plucked from a branch. The routine of a working actress is built not on glamour, but on a strict, almost monastic schedule. She is driven to the studio before dawn, the town car moving through silent streets where the palm trees stand like dark sentinels against a lavender sky. At this hour, Los Angeles is still and soft, the garishness of daylight not yet woken. The studio gates open onto a self-contained village, sound stages like enormous barns, dressing room bungalows in tidy rows, and commissaries already smelling of coffee. Her dressing room is a small, sunlit space with a chaise lounge, a vase of fresh flowers, and a full-length mirror. She does her own hair, pinning the auburn waves with a practiced hand. Outside, the crew prepares the set, a drawing room or a garden patio built from lath and plaster, painted to look real under the hot lights. The cameras are heavy black machines manned by quiet men in rolled-up sleeves. She learns their names, greets them with a nod, and then settles into the stillness before the scene. There is a sacred hush just before the director calls action, a space where the world holds its breath, and she breathes it in like cool water. The set of Little Women becomes a second home during filming. The March family house is a careful construction, but it feels astonishingly real with its worn rugs, flickering candles, and a fireplace that crackles with real wood. She plays Jo, the headstrong sister, and the role fits her like a familiar coat. Between takes, she retreats to a quiet corner where a prop window overlooks a painted garden. The light on set is a deliberate amber wash, mimicking the gaslight of the 1860s. She sits in a wooden chair, script in lap, watching the cinematographer adjust a lamp with delicate precision. The smell of sawdust and hot electrical wires is pervasive. In these moments, she reflects on the strange magic of cinema, how a false window can bring a true tear, how a painted backdrop can evoke a New England winter even under the California sun. The other actresses on set whisper together, but she keeps her distance, not out of coldness, but from a need to conserve the emotional reservoir she will draw from for the next take. Her portrayal is described as luminous, a word that captures the quiet fire she brings, a light that never flickers, but burns steadily. Her private life beyond the lot centers on her house, which she eventually buys and fills with a quiet, deliberate collection of objects. The living room is a haven of cream-colored walls and cypress beams, the furniture covered in pale linen. A Steinway piano stands in one corner, its lid closed, a stack of sheet music resting on top, Beethoven, Debussy, Cole Porter. A large window frames the hillside, where native sagebrush and manzanita grow in silver-green tangles. In the afternoon, the light slants low and honeyed, casting long shadows from the ceramic pots on the terrace. She often sits here alone, reading or writing letters by hand on heavy cream paper. The nib of her fountain pen scratches softly, the sound mingling with the wind chimes on the porch. She writes to her family in Connecticut, describing the peculiarities of Hollywood in gentle, amused tones. The garden becomes her therapy. She plants rosemary, lavender, and a small orchard of citrus. Digging in the earth with her bare hands, she feels a connection to the simple cycles the movie industry ignores. The scent of turned soil and the sight of a single ladybug on a leaf are grounding anchors. Sunday afternoons are reserved for long walks in the hills that cradle the city. She trades her studio trousers for sturdy khakis and a broad-brimmed hat and sets off along dusty trails bordered by wild fennel. The heat of the day eases into a golden haze as the sun begins its descent. From the ridges, she can see the entire basin, the distant downtown towers, the flat grid of streets, and always the ocean like a gray-blue promise. Hawks circle silently overhead, riding thermal currents with an effortless grace she admires. She walks with a long, steady stride, not to achieve a destination, but simply for the rhythm. Sometimes she pauses by a gnarled oak, its bark deeply creased, and watches the light shift on the distant mountains. The chaparral is quiet, but not silent, the buzz of insects, the rustle of a lizard in the dry leaves, the sigh of wind through sage. In these solitary rambles, she finds a clarity that the studio soundstages cannot provide. Nature here is not the lush, green embrace of Connecticut, but a stark, sun-bleached honesty that demands a different kind of strength. She comes to love it, this landscape of endurance. Evenings at home are uncomplicated. The kitchen is her other stage, a small room with blue and white tiles and copper pots hanging from a rack. She cooks simple meals, broiled fish, steamed vegetables, a sliced tomato with basil from the garden. The radio might hum a symphony in the background, the volume low. She eats at a wooden table by the window, watching the sky turn from peach to indigo. The first stars appear, faint and trembling. After dinner, she might run lines for the next day, standing barefoot on the cool living room floor, her voice soft. Or she might simply sit with a book, a single lamp creating a pool of light. The house settles around her, its adobe walls releasing the day's stored heat. The fountain in the courtyard trickles on, an endless melody. In this piece, she is not a movie star but simply a woman in her home, listening to the night arrive. The fame that surrounds her outside these walls is a distant rumor. Here, there is only the steady ticking of a clock and the quiet rustle of turning pages, a life of chosen solitude, rich and deep.